My sister declared, I'm naming my baby after Grandma, the grandma who raised me when our parents abandoned me at 7. My sister had seen her twice. I didn't argue. I simply gave my daughter the same name and filed the birth certificate first. When Grandma's will included the line, to my first great-granddaughter named for me. Imagine for a moment a name. A beautiful, cherished name. Now picture that name being twisted, weaponized, and thrown in your face, a declaration of war you never signed up for. That's exactly what happened to me, and the fight that followed, over a name and a legacy, changed everything. My sister, Megan, announced she was naming her daughter Evelyn. She said it was for our grandma, the very same Grandma Evelyn who'd raised me when my own parents abandoned me at 7 years old. Megan had met her twice.
Twice.
And honestly, I didn't object. Not out loud, anyway. I just named my own daughter the exact same name and filed the birth certificate first. Because when Grandma's will came with a clause for my first great-granddaughter named after me, well, you can imagine the chaos that followed. Christmas brunch at my parents' house was always a performance, but that year, it felt like a trap. Megan stood at the head of the dining table, in a cream sweater, that too-bright smile she saved for Facebook photos plastered across her face. Her husband filmed on his phone, naturally. My mom clinked a spoon on a glass like we were at a wedding, not crowded around my dad's scratched old dining table. Okay, everyone. Mom beamed. Megan has an announcement. My daughter, Evie, sat beside me, her legs tucked under her, quietly coloring on the little paper placemat I'd learned to bring. My family didn't keep kid stuff around unless it belonged to Megan's kids, you see. Megan held up a tiny onesie. Pink letters, the name Evelyn printed across the chest like it was a trophy. We're naming her after Grandma, she announced. The room erupted. The kind of applause you give when you're trying to prove you're a good family in front of company. My hands went cold around my coffee mug. It wasn't because I hated the name.
No.
It was because Grandma Evelyn wasn't just a cute story to me. She was the reason I didn't end up in foster care. She was the woman who took me in when my parents vanished on me like I was a bill they could just ignore. And Megan? She'd met Grandma Evelyn twice. Once at a rush Thanksgiving, where she showed up late and left early because the vibe is depressing. And once at a hospital visit, where she spent more time taking selfies in the parking lot than actually sitting with Grandma. Megan kept talking, that blinding smile never faltering. I just feel like Grandma was such a big part of our family's legacy, she gushed, hand resting on her belly. And I want my daughter to carry that strength. My mom dabbed her eyes like she was watching a commercial. My dad nodded solemnly, like he'd been the one doing the raising. Across the table, Evie looked up. Who's Evelyn? She whispered. My throat tightened. I leaned close, brushing her hair back. My grandma, I said softly. The one who loved you. The one who made you banana bread and called you her little shadow. Evie smiled, a small, private little thing. Then, Megan's gaze landed on us. She tilted her head like I'd just ruined her perfect shot. You're quiet, Linda, she said, still smiling, but the edge was there. You're not mad, are you? Everyone turned. I could feel my pulse throbbing in my fingers. I could also feel Evie shrinking beside me, sensing the room's attention sliding towards something sharp. I wasn't mad. I was tired. I swallowed. No, I said, my voice barely a whisper. It's a beautiful name. Megan's smile widened, pleased with herself. Good, because I didn't want you being weird about it. And my mother laughed. Not nervously, not awkwardly. She laughed like Megan had just told a cute joke, and I was the punchline. I stared at the onesie on the table, at the printed name, and something inside me went very, very still. Because in that moment I understood. They weren't honoring Grandma. They were claiming her, like she was a family heirloom Megan could wear for attention, even though Grandma had been mine in all the ways that actually mattered. And my daughter, sitting quietly with her crayons, didn't even get the courtesy of being included in their rewritten story. That was the hook in my ribs. That was the moment I knew Christmas brunch was just the beginning. I'm Linda. I was 36. I lived in a 2-bedroom rental on the edge of town, where the streetlights buzzed and the neighbors kept to themselves. I drove a school bus. Not the cute wave at the kids and sing songs version people imagine. The real version, where you're up at 4:45 a.m., scraping frost off a windshield, memorizing which child needs the front seat because they get carsick, and learning to read the mood of 40 kids at once so you can keep them safe. I was good at it because I had practiced keeping myself safe. Evie, my daughter, was 6. She was quiet in the way that made adults underestimate her. But she noticed everything. She didn't talk much in a crowd, but she'd come home and tell me exactly who was left out at recess and why. She drew little pictures and taped them to the fridge like she was building our home out of paper. Her father wasn't in the picture. Not dramatically, not with court dates and screaming. Just gone. Another person who decided disappearing was easier than showing up. So it was me and Evie. And somehow also my parents. Because even after they left me with Grandma at 7 years old and went through a rough time, they still felt entitled to me. They didn't call it abandonment. They called it temporary. They told the story like Grandma volunteered to raise me because she was bored. But I remembered the real version. I remembered the trash bag of clothes my mom packed like she was sending me to summer camp. I remembered her kneeling to zip my coat and saying, "Be good for Grandma, okay? Mommy and Daddy need to figure some things out." I remembered watching their car pull away while Grandma stood behind me, one hand on my shoulder, the other trembling around a cigarette she didn't even light. I remembered the first night I cried into Grandma's cardigan because it smelled like laundry soap and safety. Grandma Evelyn didn't have much money, but she had routines. She had rules. She had love that didn't depend on my mood or my grades or how convenient I was. She packed my lunches. She showed up at every school event. She stood in line at the free clinic when my ear infection got so bad I couldn't sleep. When I was 14, she picked up extra cleaning shifts because I needed braces. When I was 17, she bought me a used car with cash she'd saved in an envelope inside a teapot. When I was 25 and pregnant, she held my hand in the delivery room because no one else did. That was my grandma. That was the woman Megan met twice. But when Grandma got sick, suddenly my parents remembered they had a mother. And suddenly Megan remembered she had a grandma. They showed up late, took photos, posted captions about #FamilyFirst, and then vanished again once the hard part showed up. After Grandma passed, they turned grief into a tool. And I let them because I still had this stupid hope that if I kept trying, they'd finally see me as worth keeping. So I helped with money, mostly because that was the language they understood. I paid my parents' electric bill when my dad forgot. I covered my mom's car insurance when she had a mix-up. I put Megan on my phone plan because she said she was just between jobs. I sent groceries. I sent gas money. I sent just a little help so many times that my banking app started suggesting it like a habit. When Megan got pregnant, she said daycare costs were insane. And I started sending $200 a week. $200. Every single
Week.
I told myself it was temporary. It never was. And while my money flowed out, my daughter kept getting treated like an afterthought. Megan's kids got loud, matching pajamas at every holiday. Evie got a random clearance toy in a bag with no name tag. My parents framed photos of the grandkids in their hallway. Evie was never in them. If I asked, my mom would say, "Oh, I just haven't printed any new ones." But Megan's were always printed, always framed, always right where everyone could see them. I saw all the signs. I ignored them. I kept showing up anyway. So when Megan announced she was naming her baby Evelyn, it wasn't just a name. It was a statement. It was them rewriting history while I sat there and smiled like a well-trained extra. On the drive home, Evie hummed to herself in the back seat, tracing the fog on the window with her finger. "Mama," she said, "can I see Grandma Evelyn again?" The question hit me like a pebble to the chest. Grandma was buried 2 towns over. Evie had been to the grave once, but she was little. She remembered the wind and the flowers more than the headstone. I cleared my throat.
"We can visit," I said.
"Soon." She nodded, satisfied. "I want to bring her a picture."
Of course she did. That was Evie.
She loved quietly and completely. I drove in silence, thinking about the onesie on the table, thinking about Megan's smile, thinking about my mother laughing when Megan suggested I might be weird. And then, because life has a sense of humor, I got nauseous. Not emotional nauseous. Real nauseous. By the time we got home, I was sweating. I blamed the brunch food, the undercooked eggs, the weird ham. But the next morning, the nausea was still there. And the next. I bought a pregnancy test on my way home from my bus route. The kind you hide under a bag of apples like you're doing something wrong. Evie was watching cartoons when I took it. I stared at the stick in my bathroom like it was going to decide my whole life. 2 lines. My knees went weak. I sat on the edge of the tub and pressed my hand over my mouth. Pregnant. Again. I wasn't dating anyone. I hadn't been careless with strangers. I'd had one brief, stupid reconnection with my ex months earlier because he'd shown up at Evie's birthday and acted like a father for exactly 2 hours. I'd fallen for it because I was tired and lonely and wanted to believe in something. And now I was pregnant. I didn't cry. I just stared at the tile floor and thought, of course. When I finally told my parents, my mom's first response wasn't, "Are you okay?" It was, "Oh no, Linda." Timing. Like I'd spilled red wine on her carpet. When I told Megan, she laughed. "You better not steal my thunder," she said. And I knew then, with absolute clarity, that this wasn't going to be a sweet cousin story. This was going to be a competition I never agreed to. Weeks passed. Megan became even more theatrical about the name. She bought personalized blankets. She posted Baby Evelyn on everything like she was branding a product. My parents joined in. They started calling her our little Evelyn, even before she was born. No one asked how I was feeling. No one asked if Evie was okay about suddenly becoming the invisible grandchild again. They just assumed I'd stay in my place. Quiet, useful, grateful for scraps. Then came the last straw. It happened at my mom's family baby shower, the one she insisted on hosting for Megan because it was important to celebrate properly. I almost didn't go, but Evie begged because she thought showers meant cake. So I went. The living room was packed with women I barely knew. Megan sat on the couch like a queen, opening gifts while my mom hovered like a proud stage mom. There was a big banner on the wall. "Welcome, Baby Evelyn." My stomach twisted when I saw it, but I breathed through it. Evie sat beside me in a little folding chair, swinging her feet, holding a small gift bag she'd helped me make. Inside was a tiny stuffed bunny and a handmade card Evie drew herself. A baby in a blanket, a smiling stick figure mom, and the words in her careful handwriting. "Hi, baby. I will share my toys." She was proud of it. I was proud of her. When it was time for Megan to open our gift, my mom made a big show of it. "Oh, here's Linda's," she announced loudly, like she was throwing me a pity bone. "Let's see what she brought." Megan took the bag with 2 fingers. She pulled out the bunny. She glanced at the card, and then she laughed. Not kindly. Not amused. She laughed like it was embarrassing. She said, holding the card up for everyone to see. "Evie thinks this is her baby." A few women chuckled politely, confused. Megan looked directly at my daughter. "Sweetie, this isn't for you. This is for my Evelyn." Evie's smile faltered. "I know," she said softly. "I just made a picture." Megan shook her head like she was correcting a puppy. "No, I mean my Evelyn is going to be the real Evelyn." The room got quiet. My hand started shaking under the table. Evie blinked, trying to process it. She didn't cry.
She didn't argue.
She just looked at the card like it had betrayed her. My mom swooped in, too fast, too cheerful. "Megan's right, honey. It's just she's naming her baby after Grandma, so it's special." My daughter turned to me. "But Grandma was your grandma." My mom's smile tightened. "Well, she was everyone's grandma. Technically."
Technically.
Like love was paperwork. Evie's little shoulders curled inward. She slid the card back into her lap, like she wanted to hide it. And in that second I saw it. The same thing I'd seen in myself as a kid. That confused, quiet shame. The feeling of being told you don't belong, without anyone saying the words directly. I stood up, so suddenly my chair scraped the floor. My mom's eyes flashed a warning. Don't make a scene. Megan raised her eyebrows like she was daring me.
I didn't yell.
I didn't cry. I just reached into my purse, pulled out my phone, and opened my banking app. Because there was one thing I'd learned driving a bus full of kids. If you want to keep order, you don't argue with chaos. You remove the problem. Megan's daycare payments came from my account every Friday. Auto transfer, $200 like clockwork. My parents' utilities came out of the same account. So did my mom's car insurance. They all acted like it was normal, like I was an invisible hand that existed to keep their lights on. I looked at the screen. My thumb hovered. Then I hit Stop Recurring Payment. The app asked, "Are you sure?" I pressed Confirm. A little message popped up. Recurring transfer canceled. My hand stopped shaking. I looked at Megan and my mom and said calmly, "Evie and I are going home." My mom's smile cracked. "Linda, not today." "Today," I said. Megan's voice went sharp. "Seriously? Over a card?" I picked up Evie's jacket and helped her into it with slow, steady hands. I leaned down, kissed her forehead, and whispered, "You didn't do anything wrong." She nodded, swallowing hard. On my way out, I paused in the doorway. Not for drama. For clarity. I turned back to them and said, "I won't fund a family my child isn't part of." Then I left. The first text came before I even started my car. "Mom, don't be dramatic. Come back." Then Megan, "You're embarrassing yourself." Then my dad, which was rare, "Call your mother." I buckled Evie into her seat and drove home. My jaw clenched so tight my teeth hurt. Evie stared out the window. After a few minutes, she asked the question I'd been dreading. "Am I the wrong Evelyn?" I felt my heart break in a very quiet way. "No," I said, my voice steady. "You're my Evelyn, and you're the only one who matters to me." She nodded, but I could tell it didn't fix the wound. It just covered it. That night, after Evie fell asleep, I sat at my kitchen table with a glass of water and my laptop. I didn't do a long speech. I didn't write paragraphs. I didn't threaten. I made one clean move. I logged into the joint account my mom's name was still attached to because years ago, when I was younger and still trying to prove I belonged, I'd added her for convenience. I removed her access. Then I changed every autopay that went to my parents or Megan. Utilities, canceled. Insurance, canceled. Daycare transfer, already canceled. Phone plan. I split Megan off on her own line and paid one final month, so she couldn't claim I left her stranded. The confirmation emails came in like little receipts of freedom. One after another, I sat there and watched them, not smiling, not crying, just breathing like someone who'd been holding their breath for years. In the morning, I woke up to 32 missed calls. My mom left a voicemail that started with sobbing and ended with anger. Megan sent a voice note where she screamed, "You're punishing my baby." My dad texted, "We did not raise you to be this cold." I laughed once out loud in my empty kitchen because they didn't raise me at all. Grandma did. And Grandma would have called this what it was, a boundary. Not revenge. A boundary. I texted one message in the family group chat. "I'm not your backup bank. My money is for my kids. Do not come to my house. Do not contact my daughter." Then I muted the thread. A week later, Megan showed up at my door anyway. It was early. I'd just gotten home from my morning route. My bus still smelled like wet mittens and cereal bars. Evie was at school. I opened the door, and there she was, one hand on her belly, the other holding her phone like a weapon. She didn't say hello. She said, "Fix it." I leaned against the doorframe.
No.
Her face twisted. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" Mom is freaking out. Dad's acting like he's going to have a heart attack. And daycare called me Linda. Daycare? I nodded slowly.
Yes.
That's what happens when you depend on someone you don't respect. Megan's voice went syrupy. "You're really going to do this to me while I'm pregnant?" I didn't move. "I'm pregnant too." She stared at me like she'd forgotten that fact could apply to anyone but her. Then she scoffed. You always have to make it about you. I felt oddly calm.
This isn't about me.
This is about my daughter being humiliated in front of strangers. Megan rolled her eyes. Oh my God, she's 6. She'll forget. She asked me if she's the wrong Evelyn, I said. That stopped her for half a second. Then she lifted her chin. Well, she's going to have to get used to it because my Evelyn is the one named after Grandma. The real one, the one everyone will know. There it was. Not a mistake. Not a joke. A claim. I stared at her and said, "Get off my porch." Megan's voice went sharp again. You can't just cut us off and then act like you're some hero. I'm not a hero, I said. I'm a mother. She took a step closer. If you don't turn the payments back on, I swear. I held up a hand. No threats. No bargaining. It's done. Megan's eyes narrowed. Fine, then don't come crying when you need help. I almost laughed again, because I'd been the help for everyone for years. I opened the door wider and said, "Leave." She stood there for a moment, breathing hard like she wanted me to chase her. I didn't. Finally, she stomped down my steps and marched to her car. As she drove away, she leaned out the window and yelled, "Grandma would be ashamed of you." I whispered to myself, "No, she'd be proud." And I believed it. 2 months later, I gave birth. It wasn't a glamorous story. No cute photos, no matching pajamas. It was fluorescent hospital lighting and my hands gripping the bed rails and a nurse telling me, "You're doing great, Linda." Like she meant it. When they placed my baby in my arms, she blinked up at me like she'd been waiting. A girl. I felt this deep, quiet relief I didn't even know I needed. I'd already decided the name. Not as a stunt. Not as revenge. As truth. Because Grandma Evelyn had raised me when nobody else did, and I wasn't going to let my family rewrite her into a prop. I named my daughter Evelyn, and because I'd spent years being organized for other people, I was organized for myself. I filled out the birth certificate paperwork the same day. I handed it to the nurse with steady hands. I watched her walk away with it. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I had chosen something for my own life without asking permission. When Megan gave birth 3 weeks later, she named her baby Evelyn, too. Of course she did. My mom called me furious, like I'd committed a crime. "How could you do that?" she hissed. "Now there are 2. I looked down at my newborn sleeping against my chest and said, "Grandma's name doesn't belong to Megan." My mom snapped. Megan announced it first. I didn't raise my voice. And I filed first. Silence. Then my mom said, low and bitter, "You've always been difficult." I hung up. The inheritance letter came in late spring. A thick envelope from an attorney's office I recognized from Grandma's end-of-life paperwork. I hadn't seen that letterhead in years. My hands shook just a little as I opened it. I expected something simple, a small amount, maybe a sentimental item. Grandma hadn't been rich, but she'd been careful.
She'd saved.
She'd owned her little house outright, and apparently, she'd been smarter than all of us. The letter stated there was a specific clause in her estate plan, to my first great-granddaughter named after me. My stomach dropped. I read it twice, then a third time. It wasn't about who announced first. It wasn't about who posted first. It was about legal name and order of registration. And my Evelyn, my newborn, was the first great-granddaughter officially named Evelyn. Because I filed the birth certificate first. Because I didn't wait. Because I didn't ask. The house. The savings. The small investment account Grandma had built slowly over decades. It was all earmarked for the first great-granddaughter named Evelyn, held in trust. My hands went cold, not with greed, but with the shock of being seen. Even from the grave, Grandma had protected me, protected my child. She'd written that clause like she knew exactly who my family was, like she knew they'd try to take her story, like she knew Megan would show up late and loud and claim what she hadn't earned. I sat at my kitchen table and cried silently, one hand on the paper, the other resting on my baby's tiny back. Not because of money, because of the message. I know who loved me, and I know who used me. When my family found out, it was chaos. I didn't tell them. The attorney did because legally they had to be notified. My phone lit up like a fire alarm. My mom left 8 voicemails in one day. My dad texted paragraphs about family fairness. Megan showed up at my door again, this time with tears and rage tangled together. She stood on my porch and said, "That's mine." I blinked.
No.
She shoved her phone toward my face. I announced it first. Everyone knew. "You stole it." I looked at her, really looked at her, and felt something settle in my chest. "No," I said again. "Grandma raised me. She barely knew you." Megan's face twisted. "That's not my fault." "It kind of is," I said quietly. She laughed, sharp and ugly. "So, you're just going to take it? You're going to take Grandma's house and her money and leave us with nothing?" I didn't argue about the details. I didn't justify. I didn't defend. I said the boundary, plain and clean. "I'm not your wallet," I told her. "And I'm not your backup plan." Megan's eyes darted toward my living room like she expected to see Evie or the baby so she could perform. I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. "I'm setting up a trust for my daughters," I said. "That's it." Megan's voice went small, then nasty. "You think you're better than us because you drive a bus and you got lucky?" I smiled a little, not happy, just incredulous. "I'm not lucky," I said. "I'm tired and I'm done." She took a step forward, and for a second I thought she might try to push past me, but then she did what she always did when she didn't get her way. She reached for my mother. She yelled, "Mom," like my mom was the referee.
My mom wasn't there.
It was just Megan on my porch, facing the consequences of a life where she treated people like props. I nodded toward the steps. "Leave." Megan's eyes filled with tears, but her voice stayed angry. "You're tearing the family apart." I said, "No. You did that when you taught my child she doesn't belong." She stood there another moment, chest heaving, then turned and walked away. This time, I didn't watch her go. I went back inside because my daughters were in there, and that was my real family. After I cut them off, my parents told everyone I'd been brainwashed and selfish. They guilt-tripped, raged, and showed up uninvited. So I installed a cheap doorbell cam, changed my routes, and blocked my mom. Life got quieter. Evie started calling the baby little Evie. We visited Grandma's grave, then planted her favorite rose at home. That Christmas, we stayed in. Safe, steady, and done funding anyone who erased my kid. What would you have done in my place, watching your family try to erase your past and claim your legacy? Have you ever had to draw a line that felt impossible but necessary to protect your own? Tell me what you think in the comments. I really want to know.